I had time to think about stuff more, and I realized that I was ready to live full time, and that's what I wanted to do. And I didn't know that that was for sure what I wanted to do until then. I sort of was. I went back and forth. I mean, I could switch genders. I've got sort of a androgynous build, and so I haven't had. I mean, so I haven't had any surgery whatsoever, and I've only been on hormones, actually full hormones for a year because I have some other conditions that. So that was one of the things other delayed it too, because I have a blood clotting disorder that means that taking estrogen is tricky. So my hematologist and my doctor decided I could do it. And that was another thing that held it off. I was comfortable putting it because I knew there was a chance that I would die.
Right.
And so there are things like that in my life that make things complicated and made the transition complicated, but not in the end very painful. And I was sort of surprised about that. I was surprised. Because I had enough of a life outside of work, I actually could find out what it was like to transition before I transitioned as an astronomer.
Right.
And 6 months earlier, I was out fully in my neighborhood and my bike community, which is like the city of Boston. It's pretty big. So all of Boston, Cambridge, not so much, Boston all the time. And that made me sure that I was going to do it. So I came into this when I was transitioning professionally pretty self-assured by then that this is what I was going to do. This is who I was. And I was still pretty, I'm not like somebody who just tells people this is what you got to deal with it. I try to help people deal with it, deal with me. So, and that's worked. I mean, I told the person 2 levels up from me, our associate director, and he said, "You're not going to leave, are you?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Good." So, that's the kind of thing. And I told the people I immediately worked with 6 months before I told everybody else. I told HR way before I told them it was coming.
Right.
So, I was careful even when I started to do the actual going to full time. I was pretty careful about how I did it, and I didn't totally follow. There are sort of rules about how you transition professionally, and I didn't really do them quite. I tried to tell people personally more than write letters. I never did write a letter to anybody at work. I wrote to some boards I'm on. I telling the board, they're board members.
How did you work with collaborators that you were in contact with via email or international collaborations?
This is funny. So I was working on the 2-mass redshift survey, and Lucas McCree, the lead author. So I've known people. Most of the people on it have been here but aren't here now. So they all knew me before, and I'm trying to think of how this worked. I think what happened is I actually sent Lucas an email. As we were coming up to the final publication, we hadn't gotten there yet, and it was comments on the drafts. And I think I sent him, but I just transitioned at work, and I guess I sent a message from my new account. I mean, it's really funny because my account was last name only, so I just changed the first initial on it for my email address. So, and he saw this letter from Jessica, and I'd actually written some, and then I wrote. What I did is I set up a web page that on my personal website outside of the observatory that explained things briefly.
Right. And I read that page, by the way.
Good. So I did that. I wanted to have a reference that I could just tell people because so this is the only collaboration. So what he did is he asked, okay, so how do you want your name in the final paper? You want to change it? And I said, sure. And the same thing was true like the AAS. Because I've run the website for the Dynamical Astronomy Division for a lot of years, I knew the people at in the AAS administration. And so I just said, I want to change it. And they said, okay. And my MIT Alumni Association, I was on the committee organizing our 40th reunion. And the alumni representative said, okay, do you want to change your name? And I said, okay, you can change it. so name changes went pretty easily. And then the other thing that I have is I have software that's used pretty widely. And so I get emails from all over the world about the software. And it's so extensive that my name isn't changed everywhere. And I'm not sure how I should do names on software that I wrote before I changed. And
Right.
I haven't done a wholesale name change to change the past.
Okay. So is it still an ongoing process that'll coming out to people that knew you with your old name?
Yeah, with the software, people, I mean, it happened. It's nice now because mostly people say, I get lots of messages to Jessica Mink. Dear, this last week was Dear Dr. Jessica Mink, something like that. Usually I say, nope, not doctor, but I never sign it with. So anyway, it's sort of changing, and more of my stuff has my name on it now than my old name. But I get stuff occasionally, and I just tell people, read this, and it'll explain what's happened. And people do, and they change. I mean, it's been really quick, and it's pretty nice to have a place where I can point people that I've sort of worked it out. And actually, it's sort of funny because the original statement was it's based on something I told somebody. I serve on a board of a nonprofit, and we had this is actually over 4 years ago now, so way before I was really out to very many people, we had a inclusion and diversity workshop, an all-day workshop on diversity and inclusion. And so I decided, since it could come up, I should tell the president of the organization. So I worked with my then spouse, who is a psychotherapist, to write a description that was totally non-pathological. So if you read what I wrote, it's really there's nothing bad. I mean, it comes across as I tried to make it like this is a normal thing. It's like unusual, but it's not. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I've referred to people to. So having that, I mean, I have a pretty extensive web presence, and that was the other thing that was sort of fun, is because I transitioned in like November, around Thanksgiving of 2011 at work, and I actually transitioned. The fun thing about my favorite transition story is that the ADAS conference, which is Astronomical Data Analysis Software and Systems, was in Paris in 2011. And so I wasn't sure how I was going to go because I was like out everywhere but at work. Mm-hmm. And I have a good friend who travels a lot for business. And so like the day before, actually, yeah, the day I left, I think, actually, I asked her to help me sort through clothes so they would all fit. And so I decided at the sort of last day before, like I said, the day I left, I decided I was going to transition there. And I didn't have ID for traveling yet. I traveled as a guy. And I showed up, and there was a workshop in the afternoon. I went to the workshop as I checked in. And then after the workshop, we had a reception at the Paris Observatory. So I got in the elevator to go up to my room, and this is a conference. This was like the 21st conference. And I'd actually been on the organizing committee of the 20th, and I'd been to most of them since the first one. So a lot of old timers knew me. And I always had long hair. And I think I was probably more androgynous than people thought I was. I mean, if they didn't know me, they weren't always sure. Mm-hmm. So I just told people when we got in the elevator, I told some of my friends, well, it would be different when I come back down. So I put on a skirt and jacket and boots and a raincoat because it was raining, and came down. And there were some people that I only knew